Yeah,
So, welcome, Ben, to the channel. What's your last name? Is it Schaefer?
Schaefer, yes.
Is that a secret or is that like a public thing?
I don't have many secrets, so no, it's all public.
Good, good. Yeah, me either. Once I started making videos on YouTube, it was like my life. My life is I've shown people my sock drawer, like literally, and like my toothpaste drawer and how it's organized and all that stuff.
I haven't gotten that far.
Yeah. So I'm about to buy a new house, or I did just buy a new house, and I think I might slow down a little bit on showing everybody everything. So we'll see how it goes, but I suspect that'll last a few weeks, and I'll be showing people my new sock drawer. But anyway, Ben owns Unplugged Performance. You guys are based in California.
Yeah, we are.
We thought it'd be cool. We haven't met. We've sent a few texts back and forth, but we thought it'd be smart to just hit record on a Zoom call and start to bring me up to speed. I literally, like the Model 3 is sitting right here. I just got it like 2 hours ago. I haven't even driven it yet.
Amazing.
And so after this call, I'm going to go out and drive it for the first time. And so I have zero experience. Remember, I told you my goal is to I'm going to de-nerd this thing and because it's a darn nerd mobile and there's a bunch of nerds there at the Tesla store like picking up their car and it was so funny. There was one guy that was there that was picking up his car and we could kind of see him outside and he's losing his crap because that he's like looking like there's like a little scratch here, like a little mark there. And I wanted so desperately to go out and help him because that's what I do, fix that kind of stuff. But my wife wouldn't let me go out there because he was losing his crap. I think he refused the car. But I'm actually really, really pleased. I mean, the experience was good and the quality is like I just got the 2021 with all the blackout everything. It's all the panels line up fine for me, and I'm going to get it under lights and see what the paint looks like. But it sounds and feels like a really nice car, and so I'm kind of pumped about that. So anyway, give us a little of your background on Teslas and how do you get into modifying these cars?
Yeah. And by the way, I will say we just took our 2021 performance. We got it Thursday
Mhm.
and stripped the car apart and built it into a race car and had it at the track on Sunday. So we
Hmm.
did a 30-hour race build. And then actually today I just got an update that our Nürburgring office just took delivery of a car as well. So we have two brand new 2021s, both in the pearl white with the 20-inch Uber turbine wheels, probably similar spec to yours.
Yep.
And we're going to be testing both of them, both in Germany at the ring and in California. But rewinding a little bit, the background of our business actually started 20 years ago as Bulletproof Automotive, and we have done a lot of Japanese cartooning over the years and been involved in cartooning culture that whole way through, everything from the first Fast and Furious movie to a variety of things along the way. And then in 2013, we found ourselves as neighbors of Tesla at their design studio in Hawthorne. So we have a building, our showroom and office is next to the design studio where all the Teslas are designed. Our neighbors are them in SpaceX. And we happened to meet some people at Tesla in 2013, our neighbors, and they liked our work with Bulletproof, and they kind of just posed the question of what we thought about modifying Teslas. And it didn't take us long for us to realize that was a really interesting question and topic. And we got our first Tesla in 2013, Model S P85 Plus, and right away I realized this was where I wanted to dedicate my time and all of our company's resources towards this, because at the time it was an interesting kind of challenge to the car enthusiast background that we had. These days, it's more obvious that Teslas are performance-oriented cars. You can go to the racetrack, have a great time. But back then in 2013, it was this scary unknown invader into the automotive world where people were saying, can you modify an electric car? People thought it was threatening to car culture, and there was all kinds of controversy around it. So from somewhat of an existential point of view, being car enthusiasts and tuners, and at that point, we're 13 years into our business, we took it upon ourselves to try to answer, what does Tesla tuning look like? What does electric car tuning look like? Can this be an exciting and fun future for the next generation of car enthusiasts? And we're 7 years into it now. on the Unplugged side of things, and have created track day events like Tesla Corsa, and have sent cars around the world to race, and thankfully have lap records at most major tracks. And our entire purpose is basically to see how far we can take the platform and how far we can encourage Tesla enthusiasts and the community to rally around these cars as being more than just the responsible choice for environmental reasons, or more than just the technological choice because it's a big iPad on wheels. We want to challenge the car enthusiasts to consider electric cars, which each year has gotten easier as the cars have gotten better and the business for Tesla has become bigger and people find out about it. But that's really our goal, is to build a car that's as fun on track as a Porsche or BMW, or our background is Nissan GTRs. And we're getting there. I mean, every year we get closer, and it's fun to see the community evolve. So
Tesla corporate approached you. Tesla corporate is on board with this.
Members of Tesla corporate. It's hard and it's overreaching for us to say that we have some official contract with Tesla corporate, but influential members of the company are fans of ours, customers of ours, and have given us friendly pushes forward. We have no official relationship with them other than just, we're friendly neighbors, I would say.
Have you noticed, like Audi will make an effort to cause you problems if you put a suspension or an exhaust, or God forbid a tune? Audi's famous for, you call them TD1 cars, or or Porsche, not a huge fan of you modifying their cars. What have you noticed from, Tesla service on doing things like modifying suspension and brakes? And obviously I would guess they don't take too kindly to you modifying battery output, motor output. What have you noticed there from a serviceability perspective?
It's a really good question. We internally have a line that we don't cross as far as knowing where it goes from a value add to a value take from Tesla. In other words, I think once you get into hacking the computer, get into batteries, or get into software, you're starting to introduce errors to, that can cause the company trouble. So we know where the safe zone is, or how we perceive it to be. And that's on bolt-on reversible parts that don't influence the Tesla lockdown kind of secret sauce of how these cars operate. And yeah, that's partially disappointing because we're used to coming from a background where if you wanted 1,000 horsepower, you could just modify it and get it. In this case, everyone wants us to get involved in power tuning. We just haven't found a responsible way to do it where we feel like we're not introducing risks for Tesla. In terms of the things that we are doing, it's pretty straightforward based on what we've seen in the past. I mean, SEMA as an organization has created a legal structure in the US where a company can't legally void an entire car's warranty over something unrelated. So there's already consumer laws in place around this. Different manufacturers can go through different levels of difficulty for car enthusiasts to modify. I think Tesla's been very reasonable from our experience. We have, thousands of customers around the world, and their cars still get regularly serviced at Tesla service centers, and we understand the pros and cons of it. And I think Tesla's quite reasonable. But it's a dynamic thing where if people abuse it in the wrong way, then the manufacturers push back. Like I remember, just before I started my business, it was the late 90s, and the Toyota Supra Turbo was out. And I remember there was a series of guys who basically, I'm not sure how widespread this got, but I remember this story going on where people basically would say, the car's under warranty. I'm just going to run a ton of boost. When the turbos blow up because they were over boosted, I'll just bring it back to Toyota and I'll get new turbos because it's under warranty. And they just kept pushing the limits past what they were designed to do for the factory parts. And they did it because they knew it was kind of just a free parts replacement for as long as the warranty lasted. But if you abuse stuff like that, I think that's where the manufacturers have good reason to push back. So it's all logical. In other words, can you expect that your battery warranty is going to be void because you upgrade your brake pads? Of course not. There has to be correlation. But if you change your springs and your shocks have a problem, then Tesla can say, this is related one thing to another, and you're on your own. There's no direct rule book for it, but common sense generally applies. If you have a problem with the car that's related to something that you modified, Tesla has the right to say, we'll get you the parts, but you're going to have to pay for it. It's not free. And
And
I
that's
haven't seen them abuse that. I think it's been fair.
and that's the expectation. I talk about this a lot. I have a lot of, I'm 40 years old. I have a lot of younger followers, and a tendency to, people have a tendency to tune their car and then flash it back to stock when they go in and when something's wrong. And I just feel like you're gonna you're gonna trip and fall and break your jaw or something. Something bad's gonna happen to you if you chase that unethical way of doing things. But yeah, you put it this car wouldn't have an exhaust, but if you put an exhaust in the car and the air conditioner breaks, I mean, come on. I mean, that has nothing to do with one another, and it really depends on your relationship with a dealership and the service department and stuff like that.
That part's still true. That part is still true. I mean, in the Nissan GTR tuning world, where there's almost no GTRs that are stock, they're all modified. It was always, your local dealer, who you knew there, and how friendly they were to you. And this is always the case. There's a human interpretation element to it. So you might have a service manager that's friendly, or you might have one that's having a bad day that won't cut you any slack. And I think that there's always a human variable there. But in general, I think Tesla as a company seems to support the idea that if you do things in good faith, they'll do things in good faith. If you're doing something shady, you're trying to hide something, all bets are off.
Yeah.
But also with Tesla, you can't do anything shady or hide anything because they see the car all the time. It's always in the cloud. So you're not going to be able to trick them. Like whatever history you have with the car, they're going to know it.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's available for it. What have you guys seen so start with what you guys make for it, and then we can kind of talk about what the going too far and what doesn't work and what does work. What are you guys making now for the car?
It's a long list. We make a lot of stuff for the car. We make stuff for all Teslas, for every.
Well, let's start with every
version of the Tesla. I mean, it's all the same. There's all the same stuff that we can't do and the things that we can do. The things we can't do are things that relate to power output, relate to software, relate to battery. It isn't that it's impossible, just that we think it's the wrong thing to do on a car that, you want to have firmware updates, you want to have supercharger access, you want to have warranty. So those things we don't get into for any of the cars. Everything else we do. And this is the thing about modifying a Tesla is that, some rules still do apply. It's an electric car, but it still has brakes, it still has wheels, it still has physics involved, it still has aerodynamics, it still has suspension. So we make a complete car basically from every aspect that we can modify to make it better. Our vision, and a simple way to describe what we do, we're basically trying to make an equivalent of like an AMG, or in the Porsche world like a GT3 and an RS version. We're trying to do that kind of level of incremental upgrades to the top spec Tesla. So when you buy a Tesla Performance Model 3, you get all the power you can get, but you don't get differentiation on wheels, suspension, brakes, aerodynamics, interior. So we do all of those things. Mm-hmm. So we manufacture our own wheels, we manufacture our own suspension and a variety of suspension parts, we manufacture our brakes. We have invested more than really most aftermarket companies that I've ever seen in any category on aerodynamics. We do full CFD studies on the car and have developed aerodynamic parts for different purposes. So we have one thing which I think is pretty unique. We develop parts that are focused just for increasing range and efficiency. Usually the aftermarket's only about racing. We actually made some parts that help the car gain some range. And then on the opposite end, we developed a whole suite of higher downforce parts that balance drag and downforce, where we basically can create an increase of front and rear downforce without any detriment to drag. So we're basically building the platform for a complete car in harmony, which means you have to do all these things. I as a car enthusiast, I used to have my own philosophy and disagree with people who would only build a car for drag racing or only build a car for this or for that. My preference is a car that does everything in balance well.
Yeah.
So that's our approach. So to answer your question, yes, we do all of it, lightweight stuff. We have Lexan window replacements and roof glass replacements. We have racing bucket seats and safety equipment, both in roll bars. We have a bunch of versions of suspension, from entry-level springs to three-way adjustable external reservoir coilovers, all of the above. It just depends on if you're trying to break a lap record on a major racetrack, or if you're trying to have a great daily. We kind of built solutions around all of that.
Mm. So let me ask about a couple of different parts that I'm really interested in. The headliner's a little goofy on here. You guys make an Alcantara headliner. How hard is that to do, to install?
It's not too bad. Actually, I have our first Model 3 we got was one of the very first consumer cars that wasn't internal. And the first, I want to say 4,000 cars had Alcantara headliners, and then they phased it out. So there's a little bit of history there where I think originally they wanted to do it. I don't have a good reason as to why they stopped, but it's a popular thing to do. I mean, from our side, the hard part about it is that it requires a core exchange. We basically reupholster the factory headliner, and that makes it extremely difficult for shipping across the country or around the world. We have shipped them, but juggling getting product back and forth when it's big and bulky is not the easiest of things to do. Installation is not hard. I mean, it's our guys, it takes an hour or two to take it out, another hour or two to put it back in.
So it's something that has a bunch of clips that I could physically do. A lot of times, people get real bent out of shape about shipping stuff, and I've paid tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in my life to get stuff that I otherwise couldn't get, and I'm not one to road trip. So, if I had to get 3 pallets, put them together and pay some special shipping rate, I'd freaking do it. What's it going to cost? $1,000 to ship it, across the country. But that's one of the things I've been thinking about doing, because it does. I'm really surprised today. I was expecting something much less than what I got. I was expecting a rattly, unaligned mess.
Why do you expect so little? You just reading only the bad news out there, or what?
Well, remember, I'm coming from the world of high-end detailing, right? And so that world is a little different. That niche is a little different than the just the average car guy. And so every other comment when I say, "Hey, I'm going to get a Model 3," every other comment is, "Well, boy, just wait. You're going to hate this thing. You're going to hate the panel gaps, and you're going to hate this and that." And so the 2021, you can tell there's some really significant improvements in just the fit and finish of how everything's put together. Of course, having all the black trim really appeals to me. Getting rid of the chrome. I think chrome shouldn't exist, and so and then just sitting in the car, when it's driving down the road, it's tight, it's smooth, it's really pretty remarkable it's because it's a base $35,000 car. Now mine was 60 something thousand when it was all said and done, but still it's a $35,000 car, and is which is what, like a Nissan Maxima.
Well, but that's the fair comparable to everything. A base BMW 3 Series or Audi, A4, or in Japanese terms, the Mitsubishi Evos and the old Skyline GTRs. All of these cars had a base car that was 30, 40 grand, and then a top version that was double that. So I think that formula is consistent. But the one thing with Tesla, and they're always getting better at the things that they're not great at. But to me, that whole conversation is always a moot point. Like, I had a customer probably 3 years ago when the Model X was newer, and they had a bunch of bugs with the Model X, and the Falcon doors were doing all kinds of funky stuff. And, the guy came in and he complained about all these little build things. And at the end of it, I just reminded him, that isn't why you bought the car. You bought the car because it has all this crazy technology that no other car has anything even close to. So, and I think that's for most car enthusiasts, once you own a Tesla, even if the paint isn't as good as XYZ car, that isn't the reason you buy the car. You buy the car because it has track mode, and it has autopilot, and it has all these things that there's not even anything in the ballpark to with any other car manufacturer. The acceleration, the handling, the center of gravity, the driving experience, the storage, the usability, all of these things, there's not anyone in the same world as that. So all that's left for naysayers at this point is to try to find one bad panel gap, or to try to find one area where the clear coat's not good on the paint, and to say, oh, they can't make a car. And I think the whole conversation is kind of overblown, personally.
So I wonder, I was thinking about that guy that, was really, you could tell he was really struggling when he's picking up his car today. And you would think that I would be that guy because I'm the detailing freak and all that. But maybe it's because, I've got 5 other cars out here that are like my pursuit cars. Like if my GT3 RS had a, wave in the hood or something, I'd be freaking out. And so maybe I'm viewing this Model 3 as more of just a fun little, like, this isn't like my car. This isn't like the car I've saved for and like have aspired to get. And then it's more of a, hey, I want to see what this is all about kind of thing. But I was really surprised at how I felt when I picked the thing up. And just to bring you up to speed, the reason I bought this car is I suffer from something called vasovagal syncope, where I'll go to the doctor and I'll pass out. And so it's entered into my regular life. One of my phobias is that I'm driving out on the road and I'll pass out. And so the main reason I bought the Tesla was because it has autopilot.
Yeah,
it has all these things. And so I have all these amazing cars that I can't drive or drive. There are times when I can't drive them. And so the whole point of me buying this car was so that I could double click and the car, sort of takes over. So if I'm in traffic and I start to feel trapped, or I start to, get anxious, or start to feel like I'm afraid I'm going to pass out, like the car will take over for me. And so that's the main reason I bought this car. And one of my fears with the car is that I'm going to like it more than I should,
it's a definite that you will. I know that from experience, because I have a number of customers who have amazing collections of supercars, every car you could ever want, and all they want to do is drive their Model 3 every day.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon that there's not a name for, but I've seen it happen dozens of times. And you look at the car collection they have in their garage, and all they want to drive is the Model 3. It makes me appreciate Tesla that much more, because it takes a lot to put away $10 million in cars and to drive your $50,000-$60,000 car every day, and to just not care about anything else. It's wild to see that happen.
So why is it that the Model 3 is the enthusiast choice? Why do you say that it is over an S?
I mean, it's the same reason why it is for any car company. As an enthusiast, you want the most pure driving version of the car possible, and a lighter weight, more nimble car is always preferable to a bigger, heavier luxury car. So the branding challenge Tesla has, and it won't be a challenge because it'll be highly capable, is they're going to make their fastest car again, the Model S Plaid. And as a car enthusiast, you kind of want to see that happen in the Model 3, because it'll be a lighter weight car and probably more fun to drive. But they can't charge that much money for a Model 3, so you're probably not going to see a Model 3 Plaid. But all things being equal, everybody, I think, always prefers the car that is lighter, because physics doesn't lie, and a more nimble car is more fun to drive. And the Model 3 just happens to be that for Tesla. Plus, you get track mode, and track mode is a big part of it. They haven't given track mode for the Model S yet, and I think track mode increases the enjoyment factor quite a lot.
I didn't even notice that. This just in the menu somewhere?
Yeah, you're going to love your car that much more when you start playing with that. It's pretty cool.
So am I just going to drive around everywhere in track mode?
You could.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, just around town, it cranks up the regen, and regen's really fun to learn if you don't have experience with the Tesla. In track mode, it's just like mega regen. The car just pulls back so much, and you never find yourself on the street. You're never going to use the brake pedal pretty much at all.
So does this instill is there a benefit to to left foot driving? You have to drive them 2 feet with regen?
I mean, around town, you never use the brakes. On the track, it's a whole different experience, because that kind of middle ground between when you're in between acceleration and liftoff braking, it's very feathering the throttle is a whole different experience, because you're basically managing both pedals in one,
right?
In terms of weight transfer.
Yeah.
Which in some ways is awesome, because like just in the canyons, it's really fun to drive a Tesla in the canyons, because just going into a corner, you lift off. It's the equivalent of like really, really massive engine braking where the weight transfers to the front. And it's a really just nice fluid feeling of being able to be on one pedal, have instant torque all the time, have weight transfer on that same pedal, and to have everything so precise. But in terms of on the track, like if you're, in the S's somewhere and trying to manage the car's stability, you have to be a little more smooth than perhaps you would in other cars on throttle, because movements on there can fluctuate from essentially acceleration to braking very aggressively. But it's an easy learned skill. We have a lot of drivers that come out the Tesla Corsa who have driven a variety of cars, and there'll be a lot of first timers that come out and they learn really fast. It's pretty intuitive.
So now what about all of the, autopilot and all the, sensors and stuff? When you start lowering, you start messing with the suspension, does that affect any of the telemetry or any of the ability for the car to self-drive and things like that? When you start
we haven't had any problems like that. It's funny being a company that builds tuning parts for a platform that has no precedent for all this stuff. I was really concerned early on. We were, our origins of the business, we were the first to basically do any kind of tuning for Teslas. We were the first to develop aerodynamics, braking, suspension, all these components. So that thought process was very concerning to me early on. Even bumpers, the bumpers have radar for autopilot behind the bumper, and it has to see through the material. So you have to think about material choices for bumpers, which is a different topic. You have to think about ultrasonic sensors and placement and what the car thinks when you're redesigning a bumper. You have to think about all this stuff. So your example brought me back from when we first developed the first brake upgrades for the Model S. We made and still make a big brake carbon ceramic conversion for the Model S. And in the beginning, I was super concerned in the beginning because I'm like, well, the car is self-driving. So what does that mean? Like, what does that mean if you're changing the car's brakes and the car doesn't know the brakes are changed? How's that going to respond to self-driving? Or back then it was just enhanced autopilot, or maybe before that. It was basically lane keep and distance control of cars. So, we held the product back for about 6 months and I daily drove it. And I would kind of throw the car into awkward scenarios and see how it would respond. And in short, it's been fine. The car's software, we can't modify the car's software, so we have to operate in the kind of window of functionality the car has. And we do a lot of testing with all the parts that we make. But at this point, we have hundreds, in some cases, thousands of clients that have different mods on their car, and they're all using autopilot, and it's all fine. But there's no perfect answer. So to give you an example of where it's not going to be okay, that's coming up, and this is just probably obvious when you start to think about it. So these cars have summon built in, and at some point the car is going to, be able to pick you up from wherever. So if you slam your car to the ground and then you have the car drive itself on summon, it's not going to know to slow down more for a speed bump or angle itself into a parking lot. Like the car is going to, smash the front lip.
I didn't even think about that.
That's obvious. That's like we can't do anything about that. But anyone that's going to lower their car and expect the car to drive itself is not going to be able to train their car to angle into a parking lot because it's too low. So there's stuff you can't do anything about. But I think anyone that's doing this will understand that they're going to need to be behind the wheel, and they're not going to have the car self-park forward and smash into a curb stop because the car's too low.
Shoot. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because I'm going to.
All these things matter. Even another one, for example, is on any other car you can put extra body work on it. So if you want to put like a giant rear spoiler on a car that overhangs on the back of the car a bunch, you could. For the Model 3 or any Tesla, it'll self-park and it'll measure the distance to the wall. It's measuring that distance from the ultrasonic in the bumper, which is one fixed location. So if your body dimensions change outward, because you have a giant front splitter on the front or a giant wing on the rear, the car's not going to know where that is. And it can, smash itself into a wall if it wants to.
Yeah.
So when we design parts, we have to think about this. So our front lip and our components are not so far out of the envelope where we think there's a risk. But on the design side, we design in that constraints where we think about what the overhang is front or back dimensionally. And we look at the furthest point of the car and look at the margin of error for how many inches the car gives itself before it reaches the wall. And we have to think about all this stuff. When you're tuning GTRs like we used to, none of this mattered. The car had no sensors back then. It had nothing. You just, you manage for cooling, you manage for aerodynamics, you manage for driving dynamics, and you don't have to think about any of this stuff. So it's an extra layer of complexity for tuning. But we have a lot of experience with it, and thankfully our customers are happy.
What about staggered versus non-staggered? I mean, is there a major detriment to going, especially on the street? I'm not taking this car to the track, but on the street, I mean, is a staggered setup fine? If you guys noticed any real negative effects to doing it? Because I think it's square stock, isn't it?
It's square stock. It's an interesting topic. There's a lot of answers, and there's different opinions. I personally have not many good reasons to recommend Stagger, other than looks. I think a lot of people just like the idea of having a really wide rear tire and a wide rear wheel, and that's fine. We do that a lot. We have a lot of customers we support with staggered setups. From a practical standpoint, there's, with any project, and whether it's talking with you about how you want to modify your car or someone else, the number one goal is to figure out what's the car supposed to be good at and how are we going to make it good at that. And those are different answers for different people. For some people, the answer is it's supposed to be good at being a track car, and we'll build it for a track car. In other cases, it's supposed to be good at putting a ton of miles on it and driving long distances and having really good efficiency, and we'll build a car for that purpose. So it's case by case, but staggered is not good for any of those cases. The fastest setup on track is square and as wide as you can go. So we do, on stock fenders, we do a 305 front and rear square setup. We also make a wide fender. We do 315s on that square. So for track, square setup's the way to go. Staggered is slower. For efficiency, staggered is slower, and you want skinny. It's come stock with 235s, and there's no reason any wider you go on that, you're going to hurt efficiency. There's just no way around it.
Is that why they're stretching them? These are stretched.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. There's two things there that are important. One is, yes, the tire and the interface of the tire and the wheel, and that edge there is all part of their CFD study. And if you do a wider tire that overlaps over the wheel, it changes the aerodynamics of the car. Mm-hmm. The other thing you'll notice is when you look at the bumper low to the ground, you'll see there's air curtains on the side. And if you look at it from the front of the car, you'll see that you can see through that around the outside of the tire. So a lot of people say, I want to put spacers on the car because it looks better with spacers and the wheel with the right, quote unquote stance. When you push those wheels outboard, that airflow that's supposed to go around the tire is now going into the tire. Mm-hmm. So the aerodynamics are very particular for what it's supposed to do. And anything you do to go wider or to go more outboard will hurt range to some degree. Whether it's enough that matters, probably not. For most people, these things don't matter. For most people, they plug in their car every night and they drive plenty, and they don't care if the range is a couple % less. So running spacers or running a wider tire or wider wheel.
Oh, yeah. I'm freaking dumping this thing, and I'm going to get as big as fat of a tire as I can.
Lowering it helps efficiency.
Yeah.
And that part you probably know as a car enthusiast as well. The aerodynamics improve when you lower it. Sure. But all these things are factors that matter. So if you like the look of staggered, by all means do it. If you want it to be faster on the track, don't do it. If you want it to be more efficient, don't do it. But if it looks cool, then it's the right choice.
Yeah. So what my plan is to do, I'm going to do coilovers and then whatever, sway bars, whatever brace, the different control arms. There's like 57 control arms in the back of the car. Swap out as many of those that makes sense. Am I going to mess it up for the street by swapping? What's the spring perch in the rear? Seems like a real cheap part that seems like you guys make a really amazing billet aluminum. That to me, things like that and having like adjustable rear tow arms seems like no brainer for any car. To me, just makes it more, makes it easier to adjust alignment, and hopefully it almost always replaces some cheaper part from the stock, and so I intend to do all that stuff. What I don't want to do is mess the darn thing up and have it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm used to a stiffer ride, but I don't want some. I've gone too far in the past. I think we all us car guys have gone too far. Putting remote reservoir JRZs on on an M3 that then becomes teeth jarring, and is no fun to drive around. So I don't want to do that on a car like this. But I think that doing things like putting sway bars on the car, moving the stance out a bit to make it look better. To me, this is like my pimp cruiser. I just want to cruise around, and this is like my freedom machine, right? So I can get out of this 2-mile radius that I'm stuck in with my craziness, and go drive around, but still have it, perform well and look good. And so I'm doing some stupid 3-piece wheels on it and stuff like that. We'll see what it looks like. But I'll probably end up with a bunch of different stuff. Most of my cars, I like to change it up, change up stuff. Like you guys make wheels. I absolutely want carbon ceramics. I think that's the coolest thing ever. Tell me a little bit about the carbon ceramics setup. What is that? It looks like it's the Ferrari variant of the Brembo setup. Is that the Ferrari Corvette McLaren type rotor? Is it of that same line or ilk of those cars?
Yeah. Just to rewind what you were saying a little bit earlier, because you had some questions about tuning and general tuning philosophy for a daily driven car. A lot of it comes down to budget. Like a lot of the things you mentioned, you won't get enough of a gain to justify unless your budget allows for it. So usually what I'll do when I'm talking with someone is try to figure out what their main goals are and how to best deploy the money for the biggest result possible. Some of those suspension components, like obviously having adjustable tow arms and front upper control arms are amazing if you're going to track the car. But if you're going to drive the car on a street alignment, you may not need that range of adjustment. This car on track is happiest we find with a 3.5-degree front negative camber, which is great. And we designed a front upper control arm that basically allows you to run that on the track day and then flip a pill, and it decreases the camber by about 1.8. So you have a street camber set up and you kind of get the best of both worlds, but pretty easy management. But if you're never going to go to the track, that's money you don't need to spend because the alignment's going to be probably adequate on the street without it. So from our side, yeah, we design a lot of sexy parts that are higher quality materials, may save a little bit of weight. But for a daily driven car, what might matter more is maybe our front bumper, which we think improves the look of the car quite a lot. So maybe money's better spent on visual stuff you can see every day than on alignment stuff that you might not ever need that alignment adjustment for, because you might be happy in street alignment spec. So it's not a one size fits all answer. It's kind of trying to figure out in each person's case, if you have X amount of money to spend and your goal is whatever your goal is, how do we get the most of that? And those answers may differ person to person. If budget is more open, then yeah, replace all the cheap stuff with nice stuff, of course.
Yeah, that's right. I always have more money than sense when it comes to modifying cars. It's like, God, it's not that I have the money; it's just that I allocate the money to it.
Hey, this is motivation to work and to be productive, so that we can blow our money on our hobbies. So I totally get it. And by the way, I've had JRCs with externals on my GTR and had the cans mounted to my roll bar, which I always thought was super cool to look behind me in the rear view and have adjustable.
Yeah, then you're bouncing down the highway on the right.
That was a very loud car, so it was okay for that. But no, so all the stuff we do, all these suspension arms, coilovers, we make a street optimized version for it that doesn't really increase NVH and is very compliant for daily use. And our street coilovers have a huge range of adjustment, and you can have it ride more comfortable than stock. All of our customers basically say it's a smoother ride and a better ride than the factory. And yeah, you can basically have your cake and eat it too when it comes to that stuff, as long as you know what you're choosing or selecting. In our brand's case, everything we do is designed to be compliant, unless it's very clearly otherwise. Like for example, our race compound brake pads probably be noisier and dustier than not. But most of the time, we're able to do things with no compromise. In terms of the brakes, to answer your question, for legal reasons, it's not a Brembo kit; it's our kit because we engineered it and put it together. It's not their part number. But in terms of components, as you can visually see, it uses Brembo rotors. And yeah, the rotor construction and quality is the same as you described on those vehicles. and we happen to use a Brembo caliber as well. But out of respect for them, we don't want to say it's their product, because then they have to warranty it. It's our product. It's our warrantyable item. But we use Brembo components, 100%.
And then, like if you buy, because on these cars, it appears that, like, especially around town, like almost all of your braking is done via regen, right? So the
you never use
motor.
The brakes. Yeah, you can use the brakes on the racetrack and the canyons, and that's it. This car is all regen.
So the carbon ceramics are going to last for infinity.
Right? Yeah. I mean, we've been selling carbon ceramics since 2015. No one has ever asked for a replacement of rotor or pad, either one.
Yeah. So one could also surmise that putting a big giant carbon ceramic on there is a big bling waste of money thing.
If you drive fast, it will save you big time when you need it. The factory brakes are excellent for around town. They are not excellent on the racetrack or stopping from high speeds. And I think that they can get away with smaller brakes because the car has such good regen that in most cases it's kind of irrelevant. But if you go to the racetrack, you'll want upgraded brakes.
Because of the heavy, the weight of the car is so much heavier than...
And it's a whole different dynamic when you're braking from 120 miles an hour versus when you're braking from public roads. You know, the car presumably is designed to be driven at, 60, 70, 80, maybe 90. But when you're out at the track and you're threshold braking at 120, that's not what it was designed to do. And our carbon ceramics are a whole different animal. Everyone that drives our cars at speed is blown away by the braking performance of it. So if you ever do find yourself driving fast, or if you're, doing something maybe you shouldn't be doing on the street at high speeds and you have to stop, the stock brakes versus this, night and day difference. If you're always driving less than 80, then don't get them. But if you're driving past 80 or 90, they're important.
They're 6-piston.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah, well, I want those. I want them immediately. So I'm going to do them in black, have them refinished in black, and then and do the larger, carbon ceramic. And then for me, a lot of it's about cleanliness, the look and the cleanliness, and man, makes such a huge difference in how the car, looks, and then of course performs. And it's just so nice to have, having brakes that aren't, because sometimes having aftermarket brakes can be really annoying. And when you have some variant of a Brembo components, I found that there's no side effect. In fact, many times they're quieter and nicer than stock brakes. And of course they, can perform a whole lot better. In my M3,
I will say there's one silver lining here for Tesla on this. You just got your car. Have you driven on the setting called hold mode?
No, I haven't driven it at all yet, so I'm about to find out.
So this is, and I'm not sure I recommend this for everyone, but I've been doing this personally. On hold mode, it basically will stop down to 0 on regen, so you literally are like never touching the brake pedal except for in emergency stops. What I've found personally is I run full racing pads on my car daily. And I do that because I never hear them, because I'm almost never on the brakes. And it just so happens that our race compounds are still pretty good, even in relatively cold temperatures. And one way to test that is we put some on an autocross car. An autocross, as you know, you have to, you're up quick, so there's no time to get them up to speed. But in essence, our race compound pads, usually a downside to a race pad is they're dusty and they're noisy.
Right.
But if you can drive all day, every day, and never be on the brake pedal, you don't really have any of those downsides. But then when you're driving aggressively, you have all the upside. So this is the first time I've ever actually been pretty happy with the full race pad on a street car because of this hold mode. It takes away a lot of the downside of that.
With the race pad on a steel rotor.
Well, in this case, both. My car right now is carbon ceramics up front, and we have a racing variant of the pad there, and then I have the factory rear rotor, and I have a race pad on that. And I find it to be totally fine.
Interesting.
For autopilot as well, for emergency stops as well, for everything. The downsides normally you'd have in any other car don't really exist as much with Tesla. I'm not sure that that's a good universal advice point of view for everyone, because someone may object to the idea of running a race compound, or maybe they're driving in the snow or something that I'm not doing. But for me, it's worked out well.
I feel like this information you're sharing here like isn't really very readily available. I've watched at least 150 videos and read all kinds of articles as I'm preparing for my car to come. That's what a lot of people will do is you research, you're doing research to find out about the computer, and then when you order the computer, then you're watching all the videos about the computer while you're waiting for the computer to come, and then you get the computer and you want to we'll learn about changing the RAM and increasing the clock speed and all these things. And so same thing with this car. And I feel like by the end of this, I'm going to really be able to provide significantly more value to the world than what currently exists. I just feel like there's a lot of real car guys that have these cars, but they just haven't shared it yet. Right now,
I can tell you, they're out there, and I have a unique perspective, in some ways similar to you, where I've been in the community and I've supported car enthusiasts with other cars, and I'm seeing the same names pop back up suddenly as Tesla owners. I have so many GTR clients who we've done crazy builds with. I feel like every week or two, I see another GTR owner say, "Hey, I got a Model 3. How come you didn't tell me this was great years ago?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've been telling the world this has been great for 7 years. I don't know how you missed it." But suddenly they catch on. They're like, "Oh, damn, this is the future." And for my background with GTRs in particular, this is very much the same reason people liked the GTR when it came out. The R35 GTR was a heavy car, but it had the best technology. It had a touchscreen display from Polyphony Digital Collaboration, so it had this Gran Turismo kind of geeky, gadgety connection. It had a lot of power, and it just beat everything on the track. And if you look at like the reasons people bought R35 GTRs in 2009, same reason people are buying Teslas now. It's got the best technology. It just crushes everything, competition wise. It's a heavy car. That's the downside, but it performs extremely well. So I think people get caught up in the fact that it's electric or it's this other brand, but the reasons people buy and enjoy cars are universally the same, So the only thing that a Tesla doesn't do well, and this is actually an interesting kind of topic, maybe it's not talked about as much, is as a car purist, I like lightweight cars. Sure. And the Teslas are inherently heavy. But what's interesting is when you get a pro driver who has a lot of experience, like for us, we have worked with for a number of years, Randy Popes, and he drives for us and does product development for us a little bit. When you get a driver like Randy Popes behind a Model 3, one of the things he kept saying over and over is, "I can't believe the car is as heavy because it feels light." And there's a feeling of the car that defies the weight of it. And there's two reasons for that, which are both easy to explain. One is the center of gravity is extremely low because all the weight's in the battery pack essentially. So it doesn't feel the weight that it is. And the second is the braking performance feels like it's 1,000 pounds lighter. And that's because the regen on the track does so much of the braking. So you have this enhanced additional assist of regen on top of hopefully our big brake kit or something of equivalency. When you combine those two things, the braking performance. So we just got back from Buttonwillow. We go out there for a lot of our Tesla Corsa events. I've had multiple drivers talk to me about the braking markers of when they choose to brake from the straight. And one of them, this guy Oscar Jackson Jr., said he brakes at the same point he would brake in a Spec Miata in our Model 3. Mm. And our Model 3 is like two Spec Miatas in terms of weight. It's probably twice the weight. But it's a combination of our brakes work well, but then the regen, the combination of these two things, it doesn't perform like a 4,000 plus pound car. It feels much lighter.
Explain, because a lot of people watching this aren't going to know what is regen. Explain what that is.
Regen is a efficiency-born mechanism that basically charges the motors and does your braking at the same time. So what it does, if you've driven any car, is the equivalent of engine braking as far as what it feels like. You lift off the accelerator and the car will slow down. But in the case of regen, it slows down so much that it activates the taillights of the car to warn the driver behind you that you're braking, even though you're never touching the brake pedal. It feels like a very aggressive form of engine braking, but it just so happens to have the byproduct of charging the battery pack at the same time. So it's kind of crazy. Like, you haven't driven your Tesla yet, but if you ever are on a road trip and you have like 2 miles of going downhill, you'll see your range actually increase. which is always fun to see the battery charge actually go up when you're driving. But that's all regen, basically putting miles back on the battery pack. So it's a
Because
really cool feature.
the electric motor doesn't have a flywheel or transmission or gearing, and
Yes,
so you have the, whatever, the drive shaft is spinning in the opposite direction, if you will.
correct.
So you have all the force of the vehicle moving, and then the regen braking means that the electric motor is slowing you down and
Yep.
recapturing. It's like a windmill spinning, a turbine spinning is then recapturing and regenerating,
Yeah.
Electricity. It's
Yeah.
something that you don't really think about. So when you let off the the accelerator, I keep wanting to call it the gas. When you let off the
I gotta watch my
accelerator,
wording too. Yeah.
yeah, then the car slows itself down in essence.
And it's customizable via software. So they have a mode for first timers that don't like it where you can basically turn the regen down and it feels more like a traditional car. For that matter, if you charge your battery to 100% or if it's cold, the regen will be limited. And you'll feel an obvious difference when it's limited versus not. I don't really know why they keep that feature in place for people to have less regen. I think once you get used to it, you'll never go back. It actually is a really nice feeling to have it.
Mhm.
And then for track mode, you have the option to turn it up even more. So it's in the software, they can kind of control it for different uses, but it's one of these kind of magical driving experience components of what you can refer to also as one pedal driving, where you're just on one pedal the whole time and they're using that for acceleration and braking essentially.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering if there's some, professionals that are left foot, braking, that are, 2-foot driving, like you would if you were off-roading,
Yeah, you can still trail brake and do that as a technique to weight transfer, but the weight transfer is so extreme with regen that it becomes just a different situation. But yeah, I think people still do trail brake occasionally, depending on how they want to shift weight on the car.
Yeah. So I think what I'll do, I'm going to tint the windows. I'm going to, lower the car, wider wheels and tires, the, carbon ceramic brakes. That's an interesting concept of putting more aggressive pads on. I hadn't thought about that. This car will never see the track. My GT3 RS doesn't see the track, so this won't. And then, maybe a front bumper or something like that, something more, a bit more cosmetic on the exterior to make it, again, I keep saying I want to de-nerd it a little bit, I want to man it up a little bit. So.
Well, we basically refer to our top package as the Ascension R, and that's very similar in ethos to a GT3 RS. It has the same level of kind of street balanced aggression. It has a rear wing and a front splitter in carbon fiber, and we have an optional bolt-in roll bar and harness option. So you kind of get the same mix of products that you get when you're upgrading to an RS in terms of the aero, in terms of the lightweight functionality. I would say that's worth looking at. Even now we have dry carbon front wide fenders, which are similar to the vented fenders on the RS. All these functionality element things, we basically built a car that represents that same ideal. So that's probably worth looking at for inspiration. But the beauty of customizing a car is there's no one set answer. It's all kind of whatever makes you feel good. And these cars, thankfully, you can customize everything up to the point of putting on a bolt-on exhaust. There's a couple of things you can't do, but almost everything else you can.
That's the weirdest thing, not doing an exhaust. I feel like a weight has lifted off of my knee to chase with this thing. It's kind of like if I bought like a matte finish, like a frozen BMW. You don't have to polish the car. It's like a weight lifted off. And so that's one of the things. There's no exhaust to chase, because then you always end up buying 15 different exhausts.
Well, the beauty of it is all the money you save from not engine tuning and buying an exhaust, you can put into carbon ceramic brakes and other high-end stuff, because you have less mods you can do.
That's what I'm looking at. Yeah. Yeah, it's just to do to do that. And the only thing I need you to make at some point, I need some rear carbon ceramics too. I need that for the car. I don't want to break anywhere.
We're working on it with the rear carbon ceramics. I think it might be maybe you and me and not many others who want to splurge for that, but I personally think it's cool as well. So we're
What do
on
you
it.
think do you think in general a rear carbon ceramic is going to cost about the same as a front? Is that kind of how it
A
goes?
little bit less, but it's similar. I mean, the carbon ceramic rotors, there's just no way to get a cost effective carbon
Yeah.
ceramic rotor, and that's the big hurdle.
Well, I mean, yours seem pretty darn reasonable. I mean, it's about the same cost as a Brembo GT steel kit. You
I
know,
think so. I mean, I think we
7 or
had
eight
them
thousand bucks.
for about $8,000. Yeah, I think it's reasonable, but it's all relative to the audience. You know, you're
Yeah,
coming out of having a Porsche GT3 RS, so you know what these things cost.
yeah, they're like
If,
$4,400 a piece for
yeah,
just
I mean,
the rotor.
conversely, if you show that to someone who's never experienced those cars and they're used to spending $300 on brake pads, I mean, we have customers who are like, oh, your brake pads are way too expensive. There's someone else who sells them for $50 less. It's there's no right or wrong answer. It's all perspective. There are some
Yeah,
people who will shop for brake pads and choose the wrong item because it's a few bucks less. And for those people, carbon ceramics are offensively priced, no matter if they were 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, or 50,000. All those numbers sound crazy to them.
yeah,
But yeah, I think for the money, it's a good value. And I think, I mean, the performance, we have every lap record that exists pretty much on those brakes. So they work really well. So I recommend them, especially for heavier cars. We originally did them for the Model S and Model X. And for that, it's even more valuable, in my opinion, because you have so much mass and so much power. And you have the same challenge of factory brakes that are designed for street legal speeds. So we have customers that don't always like to drive the speed limit or want to go somewhere else and drive harder. In those cases, I think if you have the money, it's a good upgrade.
Mm. So I'd assume the Roadster, if they do make it, is going to be pretty insane.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look at the Roadster's brakes, they're very, 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 very similar to what we're selling.
Mm.
Yeah, but yeah, the Roadster's going to be a monster, and it's going to have all the right parts on it because they're not cost constrained and they're not supply chain constrained. I mean, that's the challenge, and this is one of the common questions we get are, how can we make a car better than Tesla? Because I'm no Elon Musk, and we're not geniuses here. I mean, we've done this for a while, but Tesla, like those guys, some of them are like legit geniuses, and for us, we're aftermarket. And the answer is not that we're smarter than them; is that we play by a different rule book. They play by the rule book of they have to make a car every 10 seconds. They have to be able to make 1 million of them. They have to be able to meet homologation standards in every country in the world. They have to be able to make your grandmother happy when she drives it. They have to be able to do all of these things. And for us, if we make, 20 of something or 100 of something or whatever, that's fine. And if it costs a little more, that's fine. And if the global supply for a certain carbon fiber part can't scale to 100,000 units a quarter or whatever, that's fine. Like for us, we have different needs, so we can do things that arguably are better. For example, we're able to get better aerodynamics out of the Model 3 than Tesla, not because we have better engineers, but because we don't have to deal with antiquated standards for homologation. Like they're building a car that has to have a certain angle of attack to load onto ferries when it transports to whatever country uses ferries. And I don't care. Like our customers don't care about angle for ferries. Like we care about, downforce and range, so we can design parts that work for our needs. So this is why the aftermarket works, is because there's less bureaucracy, there's less quite honestly, there's less tooling costs because, tooling is different for 100 units versus 1 million units. And we can do things that factories can't do. And it works for us and works for our customers. And that's how it happens.
So what other little secret tricks are there on the Model 3 that I don't know about yet?
Oh, man. I'm surprised you said anything in this conversation is unique, because there's a million videos on Tesla. Like, I don't even try
It's all
anymore.
the same crap. It's all a bunch of nerds.
So much.
Like the first modification, top 5 modifications, you got to wrap it. There will never be a wrap on any car that I ever own in history of ever. That will never happen. And then they talk about, maybe lowering springs. And then they get into like, well, then what you could do instead of doing springs, you could put some coilovers, and that allows you to move it up and move it down. Like these people have no idea what they're talking about. It's like there's no one. I can't find anybody. They're just they're worried about how they're going to get a Model Y for their wife. You say, so I'm hoping to make this thing freaking cool. At least
Yeah, I mean, you can go deep down the rabbit hole in any category. We were just talking the other day at the track about, what constraints and the changing constraints of cooling on the racetrack. These cars have a sweet spot for how many minutes they can run flat out, but that's also changing. The 2021s are better. There's also different techniques for track mode management if you're running a longer session to be able to get more longevity out of the car for different tracks. There's all kinds of, you can get into details as far as strategy a bunch of different ways, but it just comes down to, what's fun for you and what's the right move for modifying it for enjoyment.
I just want it to look cool.
To look cool, I think, I mean, our front bumper is like so popular because we fixed, I shouldn't say fixed, that's a loaded word. We improved one area of the car that I liked the least. And I like the whole car. And in fact, we're close with Teslas. I have to say it did a really good job on everything, but I think the front bumper may have been led a little too far by CFD. And I happen to like the look of our bumper a lot better, and a lot of our customers do as well. So that, as far as looks cool, I think our aero kit definitely does the part. And a neat benefit of that is that we designed it where it has factory ground clearance. And that's the thing, like we did stuff the hard way. A lot of aftermarket stuff, it's basically just big, bold, loud stuff. And it's actually much harder to make a car look great and then not just make it like obscenely low where you can't drive it. So our front bumper looks great, but it's factory ground clearance. Our side skirts make the car look way lower, but actually it's not any lower at all at any point. It just, the factory side skirts or rocker panels have this curve and they're blacked out, so that it makes the body line look higher, and ours are squared off at the bottom and go lower. So you get a much lower look without decreased ground clearance. A lot of this stuff you can kind of get into the product design and engineering, but visually, I think our kit functions well for aerodynamics and also makes the car look a lot sportier. So that might be a good path for you to look at.
Cool. So what's the most important question for me is, what's lead time on carbon ceramic front kit? How long does it take me to get that? I need that right now.
Oh man, we've been catching up. If you'd asked me a month ago, I think we actually had them in stock at one point. We've been trying to do that, but they take time to source and also to build. We do the assemblies in house and everything. Maybe a month. Not too bad.
That's not bad. So if we do a custom color, are they painted? Are they powder coated? How do you do those?
We can do them any way you want. We'll probably do a high temp powder coat in most cases. But if you want a different way, we've done it both ways. We also take factory breaks and paint them for customers, because someone will come in and they have a non-performance and they want it red, or they have it red and they want it yellow or whatever. So
that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do, black, and then do the factory ones with a goofy Tesla name on it and just black, powder coated, refinish. And to me, it just makes more sense. I'll just buy a new set of rears. That way I don't have to take my car apart, leave it on the lift, ship it across the country, wait a month for it to come back. Instead, I can just have a brand new set show up. And then when I'm done with them, I can sell them.
Exactly.
So I can put the OE ones back on the car if I sell the car, and then put the other ones back on. So
we try to keep them in stock too for the rears, so we can try to save you the trouble on that and just get them all done. And then we actually tear them down and then rebuild them. We don't just mask them off and keep them as is. So it'll
that's the thing. Job. That's the thing why a lot of companies just paint them, because they don't want to rebuild it. So with powder coating, you've got to rebuild the new seat.
I've seen a lot of guys just paint the caliper and the brake pad and everything on the rotor and just overspray everywhere. I don't really understand that. But that seems to be a common thing with Tesla owners.
Yeah, it's funny.
I guess they don't mind too much.
I just did that. A friend had a Tahoe, and the whole wheel well was all covered in overspray from them, painting something. And so, that's funny what people do. Hey, so man. What's the best way, for you guys, let's say someone in my case who's going to buy a bunch of stuff, and I'm sure you get a lot of people can I trust if I go to unpluggedperformance.com and I want to order a set of carbon ceramic fronts and I want them in black, I can just click the drop down and then that someone contact me afterwards, or you can just trust that they'll let you know when these things are coming? Do I need to talk to anybody? Because I don't want to talk to anybody if I have a choice. So I'd incline to just go on and buy some sway bars and some coilovers and and then carbon ceramics. And the only reason I haven't clicked the button yet is because I I reached out to the guys to try to, just to get educated to make sure I didn't screw it up and order the wrong stuff. And so that's how I got you. One of your guys said, "Oh shoot, I like your channel. Let's get Ben on the phone." But how do people normally do that? They just go on the site and they can have confidence. They order stuff and.
Yeah, I mean, most do. I mean, the website is designed for that purpose. We try to update it as best we can with any guidance for inventory. Like if we know we're sold out on something, we try to be clear on that as best we can. But at the end of the day, we're a small business and people are there and we're happy to communicate. So what I would suggest is if timing is urgent, if there's a deadline or if there's a concern, just drop us an email. Our email is on the website, but it's just info@unpluggedperformance.com. And we're happy to give you the best insight we can as to what ETAs are. We try to keep stock of most popular things, but we sell out frequently, it seems like. So we're constantly in this game of trying to catch up. So if you're not super worried about lead time and you want it, you can just order on the website. And when we have it, it ships. We ship based on date ordered. And we're shipping all the time. So it's not like we're going to take your money and go to Mexico and be on the beach drinking margaritas. We're making parts and shipping all the time. So it's safe, but if anyone's in an urgent rush, I recommend talking to someone on the team and just making sure expectations are aligned.
Got it. Well, cool, man. I'm going to go out and drive this thing for the first time.
You got to. I'm surprised the discipline that you're here talking to me. You should be driving right now.
You have to remember, I'm wound really tightly. And so me going and getting the car is like a big deal. And so I had my wife drive it because of my, problems. And so I got home and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to enjoy this. So let me just, and I knew I had to call with you. And you don't understand, like the obsessed garage part, the obsession part is real, like the obsessive compulsive disorder. And so I'm like thinking about things like days in advance. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait till the traffic dies down. I'm going to go out and, at tonight when it gets dark and just go out and just cruise around and play with the thing, when I'm ready for it. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight.
Your mind is going to be blown. I'm excited for you. It's, there's certain experiences the first time you do something like that and you'll remember it.
And I was going to, capture it on camera. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do this.
Put a camera on there, please. Put a camera on there.
That's too dark now. So anyway. I just, the camera puts pressure on. And so I'm just going to take a nice, comfortable, relax, because this car is supposed to be my savior. This is supposed to be my getting back on the road and driving around, where it's been about a year now.
I think that's special. That topic is a really interesting one. I didn't mean to glaze over it earlier, but it's a very special topic. And it also, again, it's the same thing of, people want to fixate on any negative problem they can have with the car. Oh, there's this gap or this paint or whatever, but there's no car that can do what you're asking it to do, which is basically provide insurance that it'll get you somewhere safely in the event that you have a problem. I don't know any other car that you would probably entrust your safety into in the same way that you are this. And that's a selling point. Like there's so many key selling points. And the naysayers are left with like bottom of the barrel scrapings of, let me get a close-up photo of this door alignment. Like that isn't the reason people buy these cars.
It's just weird. Like, I have such a soft spot for disruption too, because that's what, you do that in your business and I do that in mine. I mean, business in general is, the most successful ones are generally disruptors, not bandwagon jumpers. So many businesses, especially older established businesses, feel like they're missing out if they don't go and get their piece of the pie, where, a Tesla just, or Apple or Amazon or Google, these companies are outliers. And so I have a soft spot for that. And so I think the key is I know what I'm getting into, and I don't have a sense of entitlement. Like I'm not entitled to something because I just chose to, I guess it's not really early adoption anymore, but mid to early adoption of something like this, that I guess because I know what I'm getting into, I don't have this strong sense of, I expect this to be perfect. That
I just think you're just going to enjoy the experience as something new. It's like the first time I put on the Oculus Rift headset, I'm like, wow, this is just some crazy thing I've never experienced. It's the same thing the first time you drive an electric car, the first time, you go to a foreign country that's totally different than what you're used to. There's certain life experiences where it just opens up your eyes and gives you something new. And I'm excited for you, because it's one thing to move from, a BMW to a Porsche or this or that, and there's subtle differences or maybe big differences, but this is a massive leap. And I think you'll enjoy it for just that new experience.
I'll shoot you a text tonight and I'll let you know. I'll also text you and let you know what I want to buy, because I don't buy a bunch of stuff. So.
We're here for you. 100%.
Yeah, I think I'm about $100,000 into my $35,000 car already. So here we go.
It's known to happen to car enthusiasts like us.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Yep. Cool, man. I appreciate your time. And if anybody is looking for parts for their Model 3, Model S, Model Y, future Cybertruck, I'm assuming you're going to be messing with those too.
Of course.
Unplugged performance. I mean, they're pretty much the standard. It's like the dine-in for Tesla, or APR is to Audi. Unplug is to Tesla at this point. So anyway, appreciate your time, and
thank you. Thanks for your time.
Everybody for watching. I'll have more on this car as I try to de-nerd the thing, and I guess I'm going to need to stop calling Tesla people nerds, because no one's going to watch any of the videos. But thanks to Ben. And
well, you're about to become a Tesla person yourself, so whatever you say about it, it's going to relate to you a lot more personally.
Making an Obsessed Garage Tesla Nerd T-shirts. Yeah, cool. Thanks, man.
All right.